this very ANC government, and now it is recognized as one of the saviors, the possible saviors of the South African economy and of power generation. Well, let's not be unthankful for good insights, even if they are a decade late. There's one more thing that is actually a big problem, and that is that the tariffs which Eskom proposes for solar, rooftop solar, is devised to be a punishment to people who generate their own electricity from their roofs. And it's possible to follow the argument. Eskom has to produce or has to deliver the electricity during peak hours when the sun does not shine, and therefore it has to have that capacity, which is very expensive. But should it not be better for Eskom or whoever to incentivize people to invest in their own home storage as well as in their own solar top generation? Rather incentivize the bridging of those peak hours than punishing the people who have already saved Eskom from the disgrace of not being able to produce the power. I thank you.
Your time has expired. The next speaker will be the Honorable Beasley.
Honorable Chairperson, Action SA will support Budget Vote 10 because South Africans have at long last experienced a measure of relief from the devastating era of relentless load shedding. For 362 days, as of today, South Africa has not experienced load shedding. This matters. It matters to the small business owner who can finally keep the doors open. It matters to factories trying to maintain production lines. It matters to households that have endured years of uncertainty, damaged appliances, lost income, and rising frustration. Credit must therefore be given where progress has been made. Eskom's operational performance is improving. The utility achieved an energy availability factor of 65.16%, which is an improvement on previous years. But Chairperson, we cannot confuse improvement with success. Eskom itself has set a target of 70% and has still fallen short of that benchmark. South Africans know this all too well because the electricity system remains fragile. One or two major breakdowns can still push the country backwards. The reality is that South Africa's energy crisis has not been solved. It has merely become less severe. Action SA therefore supports this budget, not because the work is complete, but because the work remains urgent. Chairperson, there is another crisis that receives far less attention than load shedding itself, the unbearable cost of electricity. Even when the lights stay on, millions of South Africans increasingly cannot afford to switch them on. Electricity tariffs continue to rise far above inflation, strangling households already battling rising food prices, transport costs, and unemployment. Small business manufacturers, restaurants, and entrepreneurs are also being crushed by escalating electricity costs that make economic growth and job creation far more difficult. South Africa cannot industrialize while electricity remains unaffordable. We cannot speak of inclusive economic growth while poor households are forced to choose between electricity and food. That is why Action SA believes government must urgently prioritize electricity pricing reform. Chairperson, Action SA also welcomes a continued focus on expanding electricity access through the Integrated National Electricity Program. Yet the committee heard that approximately 1.6 million households still require electricity to access. This is a reminder that energy poverty remains a daily reality for many South Africans, especially in rural and underserved communities. Action SA further believes South Africa's energy future must be diversified and modernized, expanding transmission infrastructure, enabling private generation, investing in gas, renewable battery storage, and ensuring a stable regulatory environment are all essential if we are to secure long-term energy security and lower costs over time. Chairperson, reliable electricity is not a luxury, it is the foundation of economic growth, investment, dignity, and job creation. South Africans are tired of crisis management. They want long-term, stable, affordable electricity and an energy system capable of powering economic growth. Action SA will support this budget because progress must continue, but we will continue holding government accountable until electricity in South Africa is not only reliable, but also affordable. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Beasley. The next speaker will be the Deputy Minister of Electricity and Energy.
Chairperson, thank you. Energy policy only matters if it improves the daily lives of South Africans. It matters to the family trying to keep the lights on at the end of the month. It matters to the municipality struggling to maintain aging infrastructure. It matters to the small business owner trying to keep staff employed while dealing with rising operating costs and unreliable systems. And that is why this budget vote cannot simply be about programs, plans, or technical language. It must be about whether the work we are doing translates into practical improvements that people get to experience. Honourable members, one of the greatest challenges facing our energy sector has been fragmentation. Too often, institutions operate in silos. Municipalities, Eskom, communities, business, agriculture, and government structures engage one another only once problems have already escalated. So part of our responsibility is therefore not only to implement policy, but also to improve coordination, accountability, and responsiveness across the system. It is for this reason that we have initiated the piloting of district energy councils in 4 districts. These councils bring together municipalities, Eskom, business, agriculture, ratepayer organizations, and other stakeholders into structured platforms focused on coordination, problem solving, and energy planning at district level. Importantly, they are designed to ensure that energy matters are integrated into local planning processes and that stakeholders have direct access to decision makers when challenges arise. This may sound simple, but practical coordination matters. Functions that are responsive, collaborative, and solutions-driven. Honourable members, if we are serious about long-term energy reform, then we must also confront the realities facing municipal electricity systems across South Africa. Many municipalities are under severe financial and infrastructure pressure. Aging networks, maintenance backlogs, technical and non-technical losses, revenue collection challenges, and infrastructure theft continue to place strain on local electricity distribution systems. Communities experience these failures directly. And that is why work around municipal revenue protection and sustainability remains so important. Energy reform cannot succeed if local distribution systems continue to weaken. We must support municipalities to improve governance, strengthen operational capability, modernize systems, and build financially sustainable electricity functions that can support both economic activity and reliable service delivery. Madam Speaker, as government, we also recognize that the energy transition must improve quality of life, not only infrastructure statistics. This includes the work being done through the Energy Efficiency and Demand-Side Management Program, which continues to support municipalities in reducing electricity consumption, improving efficiency, and modernizing public infrastructure. During the 2025-26 financial year, 58 municipalities participated in the Municipal EEDSM program, supported through grant allocations aimed at accelerating the adoption of energy-efficient technologies and demand-side management measures. In the coming financial year, this support will expand to 61 municipalities. These interventions include the retrofitting of public lighting, municipal buildings, and water infrastructure with more energy-efficient technologies, alongside the development of municipal energy management systems and technical support programs. Importantly, we are also introducing innovative financing approaches through the Energy Savings Performance Contracting model. This model allows municipalities to leverage private sector investment to implement energy efficiency projects while reducing long-term operational costs. Through a blended finance approach, current program allocations are expected to unlock additional private investment into municipal energy infrastructure and efficiency improvements. This is not only about reducing pressure on the grid. It is also about improving municipal sustainability, supporting localization and technology transfer, creating jobs, and ensuring that municipalities are better equipped to deliver reliable services to communities. It also includes our growing focus on clean cooking solutions. For millions of people across the African continent, clean cooking is not an abstract policy discussion. It is linked directly to health, safety, affordability, environmental sustainability, and dignity, particularly for women and children. As part of South Africa's broader energy access and developmental agenda, we continue to support conversations and partnerships that advance cleaner, safer, and more sustainable household energy solutions. Honourable members, one of the most important developments in our sector has been the advancement of the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan, or SARM. SARM is not simply an energy document. It is an industrialization framework. It recognizes that South Africa cannot remain only a consumer of renewable energy technologies. We must increasingly become a manufacturer, supplier, and participant in the value chains that will shape the future global economy. This is about localization. It is about industrial capacity. It is about jobs. Work undertaken together with industry stakeholders has identified approximately 4,000 renewable energy-related components with local manufacturing potential. Industry estimates place this potential market at around 60 billion rand, with significant opportunity for employment creation across upstream and downstream value chains. We've also been engaging constructively with institutions such as ITAC, National Treasury, SARS, and organized industry associations on matters relating to localization and the alignment of trade and industrial policy mechanisms with SARM's objectives. This work is important because policy incoherence can unintentionally undermine localization efforts. Our objective must therefore be clear. Energy policy, industrial policy, and trade policy must work together to support local manufacturing growth, investment certainty, and expanded participation in the renewable energy economy. Madam Chair, the transition underway in the energy sector must also create meaningful opportunities for young South Africans. And that is why programs such as Youth in Energy and Women in Energy remain important components of the department's work. Through partnerships with entities such as NYDA and NERSA, 124 young South Africans are being placed into municipalities and energy-related work streams to support electricity governance, regulatory compliance, technical administration, and workplace experience development. This work matters because infrastructure alone does not build a capable energy sector. People do. We need artisans, technicians, engineers, project managers, data specialists, and entrepreneurs who can participate meaningfully in the evolving energy economy. And that is why partnerships with institutions such as EWCETA, TVET colleges, industry stakeholders, and initiatives linked to Power Up and SARM remain so important. In provinces such as the Northern Cape, we are already seeing how renewable energy investment is beginning to reshape local economic opportunities and create demand for new technical skills and industrial capability. Honourable members, part of my delegated responsibility also includes oversight of entities and programs within the department's portfolio. This responsibility must always be exercised with seriousness, accountability, and a commitment to good governance. Strong institutions remain essential to energy security, investment confidence, public trust, and long-term sector stability. Madam Chair, South Africans expect institutions that work. They expect infrastructure that functions. They expect practical delivery, capable governance, and opportunities that reach communities. This budget vote supports work aimed at building a more coordinated, more resilient, and more inclusive energy sector. The work ahead remains difficult, and there are no shortcuts. But through practical reform, stronger coordination, localization, skills development, and sustained investment in institutional capability, we are laying the foundation for an energy system that supports growth, creates opportunity, and improves lives. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The next speaker will be the Honourable Kgosientsho. The Honourable Kgosientsho.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Minister, Honourable Members of the House, and fellow South Africans. I rise today on behalf of the African National Congress to support the budget vote 10 for the Department of Electricity and Energy. This budget is more than just a set of numbers. It is a declaration of our intent to finalize the restoration of energy sovereignty and anchor the inclusive industrial renewal of all South Africans. That is what grounds the programs of the department. Bahlonishwa, sihlangana esikhathini esiwujuqu emlandweni wesizwe sakithi. Kwaphela iminyaka abagxeki bethi inkinga yamandla kagesi ngeke ixazululeke. Kodwa namuhla ngaphansi kokuqaliswa ngenkuthalo kohlelo lokusebenza lwezamandla lwe-ANC, i-ANC Energy Action Plan, sikhombisa ukuthi abagxeki ohlala bagxeka bebangakhulumi into ekuyiyona, amaqiniso ayazikhulumela wona namuhla. We have now achieved over 350 days without load shedding. This is not a matter of luck, It's a direct result of commitment to the Generation Operational Recovery Plan, coupled with systematic maintenance, which have seen unplanned outages gradually decline by 50% and a healthy reserve margin established. For the first time in 17 years, Eskom has reported an operating profit, with a year-to-date pre-tax profit of 34.9 billion, which is a clear sign of renewal and stabilization. Eskom now ensures maintenance is paid from its own revenue. Eskom has met 67% of its KPI targets, with notable improvements in the energy availability factor and a 25% of reduction in OCGT fuel cost, saving around 10 billion rand. We are no longer just managing a crisis, we are ending it. Complacency has no place in the department and its programs. We have secured the national supply, and our focus now turns to ending the load reduction, which affects townships and villages. We must ensure that every local network has the capacity and reliability to deliver power to the people without interruption. Moving from immediate crisis management to long-term systems transformation. Eskom municipalities must ensure rollout of smart meters and fixed distribution infrastructure. This is a key enabler of locally inclusive economic growth and job creation. South Africa is entering a period of structural recovery in electricity demand, driven by renewed industrial activity and rapid growth of data centers. To meet this increased demand without load shedding, we are overseeing the procurement of approximately 105 gigawatts of new generation capacity through 2029, as outlined in the Integrated Resource Plan 2025. We are advancing a flexibility-first approach that embraces renewables, gas, coal, and nuclear energy. We are moving forward with the nuclear industrialization roadmap and the procurement of 5,200 megawatts nuclear power programs to ensure stable, carbon-free base load power. Similarly, are rating gas to power infrastructure with a target of 6,000 megawatts of new capacity by 2030, anchored by liquid natural gas import terminals. We recognize that transmission is currently the binding constraint to our to build over 14,500 kilometers of new transmission lines by 2034. Through the first round of independent transmission projects, we are already procuring 1,164 kilometers of new 400 kV lines to unlock investment renewable rich provinces. At the distribution level, we are assisting municipalities through distribution agency agreements and the rollout of smart metering. This is essential to meeting the rising demand of our industrial hubs and closing the gap between the national supply and the local delivery. The ANC believes that the access to electricity is not just a privilege, but a right to dignity, inclusion, and opportunity. 1% of the South African households are electrified. This budget commits 3.9 billion this year to the Integrated National Electrification Program to reach the remaining 1.6 million households by 2030. Whether through the grid or off the grid renewable solutions, we will ensure that the rural community or township is not left behind. Ukusungulwa kwalomnyango ozimele kwakuyisinyathelo esithathwe ngenhloso yokunenkinga kanti la seyabonakala njengamanje. We have established the grid, restored Eskom to the pre-profit of 34.9 billion, and created a roadmap for universal access. The ANC Energy Action Plan is the foundation of our industrial renewal. This budget provides a fuel power to South Africa's next term. I move that the House adopt the budget vote 10. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
The next speaker will be the Honorable Ntring.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. The ACDP is cognizant that this budget vote of some 6 billion seeks to stabilize supply, accelerate generation capacity, and support energy transition. While these goals are necessary, the ACDP is not convinced that this budget adequately resolves the structural and regulatory constraints that continue to undermine affordability, reliability, and investor confidence. A central concern of the ACDP is the persistent escalation of electricity tariffs, driven in part by the pricing methodology applied by Eskom and approved by NERSA. The continued use of the modern equivalent asset value model inflates the valuation of Eskom's asset base to some 1 trillion, while the real asset value sits at some 400 billion rand, thus enabling higher tariff applications that place undue pressure on households, municipalities, and businesses. This approach does not reflect the depreciated real condition of much of Eskom's infrastructure, nor does it incentivize efficiency. The ACDP positions that this budget also falls short in addressing governance weaknesses and operational efficiencies within Eskom, including plant performance, maintenance backlogs, and financial sustainability. While allocations support new generation initiatives, insufficient emphasis is placed on grid expansion and modernization, which remain critical bottlenecks for integrating renewable energy. Moreover, the ACDP believes that there is limited clarity on timelines and measurable outcomes for energy reform programs, including the unbundling of Eskom, especially the distribution sector, and the strengthening of the transmission entity. Without clear accountability frameworks, these reforms risk further delays. As kingdom builders, the ACDP recommends the following reforms. First, speedily amend the relevant electricity pricing legislation to require Eskom to adopt the real asset value methodology in tariff applications, ensuring that pricing more accurately reflects the actual depreciated value of infrastructure. This would promote fairness and increase affordability for consumers. Secondly, accelerate investment in grid infrastructure to unlock private sector generation and renewable energy integration. Thirdly, strengthen oversight and performance management within Eskom with clear consequences for underperformance. And fourthly, enhance transparency in tariff setting processes and ensure that NERSA applies stricter scrutiny to cost assumptions. The ACDP advocates that this budget vote requires stronger regulatory reform, improved governance, and a more balanced approach to affordability and sustainability to effectively address South Africa's energy crisis. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker will be the Honorable Non-Danger.
Thank you, House Chair. The UDM believes that South Africans do not experience government policies through speeches, reports, or promises. They experience them through the realities of their daily lives. And the reality today is an energy sector in crisis. Millions continue to face unreliable electricity supply, rising energy costs, collapsing infrastructure, and the effects of years of load shedding. While the department speaks of progress, communities are still sitting in darkness, businesses continue to lose revenue, and hospitals, schools, and households continue to suffer because government has failed to provide stable and reliable energy security. While the UDM supports the transition to renewable energy and the modernization of the sector, plans alone are not enough. South Africans need delivery, accountability, and decisive leadership. While government continues to speak of recovery, millions of South Africans are still living with the consequences of years of energy failure. South Africa's unemployment rate remains extremely high at 31.4%, with approximately 5.8 million young people unemployed. We cannot separate this crisis from failures in the energy sector, because when electricity becomes unreliable, businesses close, investment declines, and jobs disappear. Although Eskom has reported more than 300 consecutive days without national load shedding, many rural communities still experience electricity interruptions and load reduction. That also includes Johannesburg. The biggest metro in Africa is still subjected to daily power outages and in some instances, twice a day interruption. This shows that while statistics may appear positive on paper, many South Africans still face uncertainty and poor service delivery in their daily lives. The UDM maintains that the energy crisis has already cost this country jobs, economic growth, investor confidence, and public trust. While we support efforts to modernize the energy sector and expand renewable energy, these plans will mean nothing without urgency, accountability, and proper implementation. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Notenja. The next speaker will be the Honorable Ghana.
This past weekend, I traveled home to my village of Lefara in Tzaneen. That visit reminded me of the real lived experience behind this budget vote and the constitutional responsibility of this department to ensure access to affordable and reliable electricity for all South Africans. There are two issues that I want to raise today: affordability and reliability. First, Minister, electricity is no longer affordable for millions of South Africans. Yes, many homes in villages like Lefara are connected to the grid, but connection without affordability means very little. Electricity has become so expensive that many families can only use it for basic lighting. During my morning run through the village, I saw many people walking towards the bushes and the mountain carrying axes and pangas to fetch firewood for cooking and heating. Why? Because they simply cannot afford to use electricity for stoves, fridges, and other household necessities. It reminded me of the painful days before electrification reached our village. The free basic electricity allocation is no longer enough. It may cover a few lights and perhaps a television, but it does not meet the realities of many family life. When electricity prices started escalating, South Africans were told these increases were necessary to fund the construction of Medupi and Kusile power stations. Those power stations have now been completed, yet electricity prices continue to rise year after year. Every year, a new justification is presented while poor households sink deeper into energy poverty. At what point do we apply the brakes to these relentless increases, Minister? Secondly, is the issue of reliability of supply. Earlier this year, when debating your ministerial statement to eliminate load reduction, I raised the plight of villages in Tzaneen that continue to suffer from this injustice. Even this past weekend when I was home, many residents complained about the ongoing load reduction that affects them. And for many, they could not even watch the first half of the Orlando Pirates match that played on Saturday because there was no electricity in their homes. Load reduction has quietly become a permanent feature of life for many poor communities. While bonuses are paid at Eskom, the people of Lefara and many other villages continue to endure unreliable supply and unaffordable electricity prices. As Rising Mzansi, we want this department to focus decisively on lowering the cost of electricity and eliminating load reduction once and for all.
Thank you, Honorable Ghana. The next speaker will be the Honorable Dr. Musi Maiman.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. I want to speak about three areas as it speaks to this particular budget vote today. Firstly, I want to say to the Minister of Energy and the team at Eskom, one, congratulations on your persistent work of ensuring that South Africa doesn't have to suffer load shedding. The second point I want to make is really focused on the future of energy. All of us appreciate the diversification of energy and the plan around that. I do want to say that that future must remain within South Africa's own sovereignty. It cannot be a function of a predetermined outcome at international conferences, whilst we appreciate environmental concerns, but COP cannot be the only place where energy policy is determined. This is going to be important that we cannot be hamstrung in building our own domestic infrastructure, using localized resources, and ensuring that South Africans are energy secure. The second question, which is fundamental to this issue of energy, is the question of affordability. Many members on the debate here today have raised this question. And honorable members, I think we cannot fold our arms and allow the determination of energy to keep going up. It will impact our own businesses, it will impact households. And what often is tragic for me is when I hear stories of people say, we have to switch ourselves off in order to afford electricity. It is an economic sabotage. And as we saw today, the jobs numbers came out and introduced 300,000 new South Africans to unemployment. The third issue is the issue of load reduction. Minister, here it's a personal matter. I went to go visit the family of Renee, a young woman who was raped brutally. When I asked in the streets of Dobsonville what had happened, everyone told me about the fact that she went to that house because that was the only house with alternative energy in the middle of load reduction. It broke my heart. Of course, I understand the complication of rape and crime, and I hope justice is served. But surely, energy is a safety feature. And therefore, in the light of this particular conversation, honorable members, when I spoke to Eskom, they highlighted the fact that they are facing a 300 billion rand potential debt which municipalities are not dealt with. Let us commit ourselves, A, to fixing the tariffs, ensuring that the future of energy is secure, and end load reduction for our citizens are at risk, and stabilize local municipalities if we're going to deal with the Eskom debt.
Thank you, Honorable.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Member, I invite the Honorable Member from ATM. Honorable Member from Al Jamaa. Honorable Member from NCC. Honorable Member from PAC. Honorable Member from UAT. Honorable Member from Good. The next speaker will be the Honorable Millennium.
House Chairperson, South Africa's gone nearly a year without load shedding. That's great news. It's brought relief to households, businesses, and an economy battered by years of scheduled darkness. But it's not the end of the electricity crisis. It's not proof that Eskom is fixed. It's not proof that this department is delivering. And it is certainly not proof that South Africans can afford the electricity that this government, the system of electricity that this government has built. The electricity crisis has changed form. It is now measured by unaffordable tariffs, unpaid municipal debt, failing distribution infrastructure, delayed reforms, and a state utility that still cannot stand on its own balance sheet. The lights are on, but the system is still failing. No load shedding is welcome, but no load shedding is not the same thing as energy security. On reliability, affordability, municipal performance, open markets, investment, and consequences for failure, South Africa is still a long way from where it needs to be. Let's start with Eskom. Eskom has reported more than 358 days without load shedding, improved generation performance, lower diesel expenditure, and a better energy availability factor. Those improvements matter, but they cannot hide the deeper crisis. Eskom itself identifies high debt, non-payment, declining sales, grid constraints, an outdated business model, fraud, corruption, and weak internal controls. Now, that's not opposition rhetoric. That's Eskom's own diagnosis. They have improved operationally, but they remain structurally broken. They are too indebted, too exposed to municipal non-payment, too dominant in a market that needs competition. They are too central to a system that can no longer depend on one entity to carry generation, transmission, distribution, debt recovery, reform, and grid expansion. Eskom certainly cannot do this. That's why the DA's position is clear. Open the market, bring in competition, accelerate transmission, give municipalities real choice in power procurement, allow private power generation to compete on clear and fair rules, establish a proper independent transmission system operator, move the South African wholesale electricity market from concept to full implementation. Stop treating Eskom as if protecting the monopoly is the same thing as protecting the public. It is not. Competition is not anti-Eskom. Competition is pro-consumer, pro-growth, pro-reliability. The people who oppose competition are protecting a failed model. That model has already cost this country through load shedding, bailouts, lost jobs, closed businesses, and unaffordable electricity prices. The crisis has moved from the grid to the household budget. A family can have electricity available and still be unable to afford it. A small business can have power available and still be priced out of survival. That's not success. It's a different kind of failure. Municipal debt now stands at around 110 billion rand. Every rand not paid by a municipality eventually lands on Eskom, the taxpayer, the tariff, or the honest consumer. The minister must tell this House what will be done about municipal debt, what will be done about illegal connections and ghost vending, distribution losses, and failed revenue collections. Not another vague turnaround plan, enforcement, consequences, a funded distribution recovery plan, real intervention where municipalities cannot manage electricity. The Department of Electricity and Energy was created to focus on energy security, reform, planning, oversight, and delivery. But creating a department is not the same thing as building capacity. A letterhead does not generate a single megawatt. A new organogram does not build 1 kilometer of transmission line. A new strategy does not connect one household. The department says it is moving from establishment to execution. Good. Then let's execute. Finalize the integrated energy plan. Finalize the gas master plan. Finalize the electricity pricing policy. Build transmission. Support municipal reform. Strengthen oversight over Eskom and the department's entities. The budget vote shows under-expenditure in critical programs. The Integrated National Electrification Program has been affected by slow spending. The departmental program responsible for state-owned entities has also spent far below projection. These are symptoms of a department struggling to convert mandate into delivery. The minister cannot ask Parliament to applaud intention. This House must measure delivery. And the same thing applies to NECSA. There is real value in South Africa's nuclear capability, but nuclear policy cannot become a shelter for unfunded ambition. NECSA's plans include front-end fuel supply and radioisotopes, fluorochemicals and small modular reactors, and the replacement of Safari 1. These are major commitments. They require money, timelines, risk management, and transparency. But an 80 billion rand ambition is not a plan. A strategy without a funding model is not a strategy. A nuclear program without financial discipline is a liability. The DA is not anti-nuclear. We are anti-waste. We are anti-secrecy. We are anti-grand announcements that arrive before the hard work has been done. South Africa has had enough of energy policy by announcement, enough of plans without execution, enough of state entities that fail and then ask the public to pay. House Chairperson, the lights are on, and that's fantastic. Now stop celebrating and start reforming, because Eskom is not fixed. Municipal debt is not fixed. The grid is not fixed. Pricing is not fixed, and distribution is not fixed. Thank you, Chairperson.
Has expired, Honorable Manahem. The next speaker will be the Honorable Hassan.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The ANC rises in support of Budget Vote 10, and we rise not in the abstract. We rise with the weight of 360 days without load shedding on our shoulders, with 89.8% of South African households now connected to the grid, and with the knowledge that this progress was not gifted to us by the market. It was built deliberately and painstakingly by the ANC developmental state with a plan. When this department was established, critics called it symbolic. We called it strategic. A dedicated ministry for electricity and energy meant focused state capacity, singular accountability, and a direct line from the Energy Action Plan to execution. Allow me to be direct with the House. The ANC has not just managed the energy crisis, we are terminating it. Because ending load shedding is not our end game. It never was. Ending load shedding is the flaw. Our end game is security of supply, expanded generation and transmission and distribution to drive inclusive economic growth and create jobs. This budget is the next chapter in that story. And today we will account for what we have built, what remains to be done, and what we must still deliver. Chair, the improved performance of Eskom is not incidental. It is the direct consequence of the ANC's Energy Action Plan, developed in the 6th Parliament and implemented with discipline by this government. The plan's core logic was straightforward. Restore generation through sustained, structured maintenance, reduce unplanned shutdowns, return capacity to the grid, and every other reform follows from that foundation. And it's worked. Let the record reflect. Unplanned shutdowns have reduced by 50%. The energy availability factor has risen from an all-time low of 48% to above 65% at year end and reaching 70% on more than 66 days. Eskom's maintenance spend has grown to 28 billion per annum, funded from its own revenue, not the fiscus. Koeberg's lifespan has been extended, reliably contributing 1,860 megawatts to the national grid. Medupi and Kgosientsho are now operating on all 6 units each, a design capacity of 4,800 megawatts per plant, 360 days without load shedding, a 62.46% reduction in diesel usage, saving South Africans more than 10 billion rand per annum. The end of load reduction in Northwest, Northern and Western Capes, with several more provinces to follow. And critically, Eskom has now reported to Parliament that it has sufficient generation capacity to meet winter demand without increasing reliance on diesel-fired power stations. For a country that has lived through years of winter load shedding, this is no small feat. For the first time in more than a decade, S&P Global has upgraded Eskom's credit rating, citing sustained operational improvement and financial discipline. This is what governance looks like when it is focused. The increased generation capacity is already translating into economic opportunity. The ferrochrome industry, previously crippled by energy volatility, is being stabilized through reserve capacity. Stable electricity supply is the precondition for local beneficiation of our minerals, for building value chains, for creating jobs here rather than exporting raw ore and creating value for South Africa and our fiscus. But we are clear-eyed. Eskom still faces challenges. The 110 billion rand municipal debt burden, the design flaws in boilers and mills at Medupi and Kgosientsho, the need to push the EAF target to 75% and beyond, the transmission grid expansion that is essential to bringing more IPP electricity to market. The ANC calls on Eskom to meet its minimum 80% of its shareholder compact targets in the 26-27 financial year, and this committee will hold it to account. The end game is not 360 days. The end game is sustained generation capacity that can support at least 2% economic growth, reduce unemployment, and produce a new wave of industrialization. But Chair, a lights on South Africa is meaningless if people cannot afford to keep those lights on. We welcome the opposition's sudden interest in electricity pricing, but we will not take lectures from parties whose municipalities double bill working class households, charging Eskom's tariff and adding municipal surcharges that have nothing to do with actual supply costs. The electricity pricing review being undertaken by the minister is the correct approach. And it is one that has been called for by the ANC in this very house. We welcome that their pricing policy is now serving at cabinet. And the ANC's position on the substance has been unambiguous. The tariff review must prioritize the following: a revision of the weighted cost of capital formula used by NERSA. The current model inflates tariffs without benchmarking for public interest. An upward revision of 50 to 200 units of free basic electricity allocation, which no longer now reflects the real energy needs of poor households, the full utilization of the 10 billion rand indigent grant, of which only 2 billion is currently reaching the people who need it. That gap must be closed urgently, and the rollout of smart prepaid meters coupled with solar panels and solar water heaters, empowering communities to manage their own energy consumption and reduce costs. On NERSA, There must be more than just an administrator of tariff applications. It must be a regulator in the public interest with the skills, capacity, and mandate to audit Eskom and municipalities on their regulatory asset-based values and costs, and to ensure the cheapest possible price reaches the end user. NERSA's own funding model must also be reviewed. A regulator whose finances are declining cannot efficiently fulfill its mandate. And in particular, it must be capacitated, not just in regulatory systems, but in the technical and economic skills to audit Eskom and municipalities effectively. Honorable Bhakti was correct in identifying this. The error in Eskom's regulatory asset base must be resolved. NERSA's tariff methodology must also be comprehensively reviewed to ensure that it serves the public, not just the utility. Electricity is a constitutional imperative. It is not a revenue stream for municipalities, and it is a level of return that must be a utility rate of return, and the ANC will not allow it to become a debt trap for the poor. On the gas cliff, the tabling of the gas bill in Parliament is the first and correct step. This legislation is far superior to previous gas law, and it must supersede it. It is creating, or it could create, investor certainty across the full gas value chain, from import facilities to domestic resource development to transmission, distribution, and sale. Regulatory structures must also be set up promptly, and the gas must reach the end user at the cheapest possible price, based on the cheapest import alternative, not import parity pricing that simply inflates the cost of doing business. We have no domestic gas import infrastructure, no national gas price, no anchor in terms of industrial customers to deliver economies of scale. And these are not small gaps, they are strategic vulnerabilities. Investment must flow through the gas value chain in order for the state to lead that facilitation. Competing port options at Maputo, Richards Bay, and Saldanha must be assessed to prevent stranded infrastructure and ensure fiscal prudence. And as I close, Chairperson, we've listened carefully. The opposition was rather passionate, but passion without a plan or technical solution is not a policy, and slogans do not build power stations. We wish to thank the parties that supported this budget vote in the interest of energy security, but the ANC is and has always led from the front. We present solutions to problems, not lamentations. The time has come for mature policy conversations focusing on implementation. Chair, 360 days without load shedding. Eskom's credit rating upgraded for the first time in a decade. 10 billion rand saved in diesel. The ferrochrome industry stabilized. Winter demand is covered. And these are not promises. These are plans that have been implemented. The ANC supports this budget because we are not here to perform for the opposition. We are here to govern, to build, to deliver, and the future is bright. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Hassan. We'll now invite the Minister to respond to the debate. Honorable Dr. Ramokgopa.
No, thank you very much, House Chair, and just to thank the members who have committed to support the budget. Supporting the budget means that we are supporting the department's efforts to ensure that we end load reduction. The people of Limpopo, in Nkuwa, and many parts of the country are able to receive uninterrupted electricity going forward. Supporting this budget means that you're supporting our efforts to ensure that the 1.69 million households that don't have access to electricity, those are affected, like I said, by load reduction, are going to benefit from the democratic dividend. Supporting this budget means that you are in full support of the efforts that we have announced to ensure that we are able to address the runaway or exponential increase in electricity, that the electricity is not only available, but it's also accessible for everyone across the board. Supporting this budget means that you are supporting our industrialization efforts, that we have reached a stage where there's a structural access in the South African electricity mix. We were able to redeploy or reallocate that access to ensure that we support industrialization. The work that we've been doing with the smelters is a case in point. And the opposite is true, that those who stand diametrically opposed to this budget essentially have expressed a sentiment that is inconsistent with what we have set out to be the objectives of this budget. And of course, that the public will be able to judge. Let me just go back to some of the points that have been raised. Thank you very much, Honorable Vapti. You're absolutely correct that one of the areas that requires attention is to ensure that the SOEs within the energy fraternity are fit for purpose and ensure that we are able to address some of the funding gaps that are confronting some of the entities. You make a correct observation that a lot of them are reliant on the fiscus. I mean, Sanedi, as a case in point, has got huge potential to raise revenue on its own to get to a position where they're able to self-fund finance. Of course, that has to do with the categorization of Sanedi. It's a conversation that we're taking up with National Treasury so that that classification is readjusted to allow Sanedi to be able to raise their own revenue. And as you know, that we are repositioning Sanedi to be the preeminent think tank on the issue of the energy complex in the country, including supporting some of the work that is done by research institutions, academia, so that we have a sense of the complexities in the energy ecosystem, but we are also able to generate the data and evidence to allow us to formulate the positions or policies that are going to advance our ambitions of, amongst others, achieving energy sovereignty and industrializing on the back of that effort. Of course, Honorable Crown Prince, I wish I had friends who were consulted to be considered for work in the department. That's not the case. Nothing could be further from the truth. And my friends are engineers doing exceptionally well. They don't rely on government tender. So I think it's important that we reflect on the truth. And of course, the information can be made available to everyone. I guess that the common theme that is coming across is the issue of the price of electricity. I do accept the critique from the colleagues. I've made the point that we are finalizing the electricity pricing policy, and it will be coming out for public consultations to allow the public to air their views. I do understand the agency and the speed that is required. Again, this department, as we are fixing, we are delivering. We are connecting people to the grid. We are working with ESCOM on the TDP. We are on the financing of that TDP, working to support ESCOM to achieve that 70% EAF, making sure that we address the price of electricity, release the IRP. So the department is working with all its objective and subjective challenges. I think we're on a good path. So this represents an energy future for the country, and I'm more than confident that the department stands ready to deliver. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. That concludes the debate and the business of the virtual mini plenary session. The mini plenary will now rise.
Thank you, Chair.
At the Capital Hotel on 15 on Orange in Cape Town. The weather outside changed slightly. It seemed as if it was improving, and then in the late afternoon into the evening it started drizzling a bit, and you started getting that sense of that cold weather coming down on all of us. But the room inside, structures within Parliament, as well as of course our guests, it is an input of daily life. Of us, it's something that's as simple as flicking the switch and the lights come on and the kettle comes on. You get your entertainment system rumbling back to life with that sound that along nicely, and people remain employed and they continue in their jobs. But at 32 years or so, and the work that still needs to be done to such that a pervasive sense of this ever get to that point. Think of it this way. When we say 90% of South African households grid, that's part of the challenges that will be grappling this evening.
Got it, thanks.
And important lessons, of course, we've learned decade and a half. And one of them is that paddle as far as and you take your eye off the ball of electricity, you know, all the other work that goes into ensuring that we remain, all that impressive electrification statistics count for nothing when that's reliable. But thankfully, as we get to the middle of 2026, there's an overwhelming sense, Bongiwe, that we've moved the conversation, and the theme now appears to be that one of transition from crisis management, that is load shedding, to building a competitive, sustainable energy market through structural reforms. Earlier on, you remember the conversation that you and I had about ESP, Eskom's a push. That when was the last time you looked at it? I'll tell you now, Bongiwe, that it has been 360 days at least of no load shedding in South Africa. So let's get into the conversation. Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa and Deputy Minister Samantha Graham-Murray join me for that conversation this evening. Having come out of delivering the budget vote, vote 10, and outlining what the priorities are. And Minister, let me start with you. I was tracing the steps of where we are, tracing them back to the marching orders given by the President in the State of the Nation address, and then the enablers, the financial enablers that were provided to the both of you by the Minister of Finance on the 25th of February for the year ahead. I'd like you to just talk to those priority areas, and perhaps to the both of you, you could pull at a thread at a time. Let's start with risk-adjusted energy planning through integrated resource plan, through the integrated resource plan of last year, gas master plan and integrated energy plan. Lots of plans, but what are you going to do with them as a priority this year?
Thank you very much. Tula Season, good evening to the viewers at home. You're absolutely correct. So I want to transition from a planning mode into execution. So the integrated resource plan is none other than the electricity plan for the country. So it articulates the mix that is going to support the demand and growth of the South African economy, and it identifies energy sources. Of course, we still remain a fossil-based electricity generation, and it will remain into the foreseeable future. But what the IRP does acknowledges that there's a need for us to diversify the mix, include renewable energy. In that mix, by renewable energy, I really mean solar and wind. So we've got exceptionally rich resources of renewable energy sources in the country, much greater than many jurisdictions in the world. So we'll be in the top 5. We'll be with Chile, the Australian outback, the Middle East, and the Sahara Desert. And then there's South Africa, the corridor, the Northern Cape to Namibia. So there's a need for us to exploit those resources. But we also accept that you need the base load, and that's why we're now talking about gas to power. Of course, there are domestic resources. Unfortunately, we can't exploit those because we're before the courts. Of course, there are other sections of society that makes the point that we must do that in a manner that is environmentally sensitive. So as we resolve those issues of the EIA's environmental impact assessments, it's important that we continue to diversify. And in the IRP, we say that by 2030, we should be getting about 6 gigawatts of base load from gas. And that's why the development of the
6,000 megawatts.
6,000 megawatts,
that's
yeah.
Stage 6 of load shedding in terms
of
South Africans would understand.
And that's why we need to build the infrastructure in Richards Bay and continue to have conversations with our neighbors in Mozambique, so that you are able to ensure that you are not just concentrated in one location, you are able to diversify, if you like, areas where you are able to inject the LNG. So we're moving in that direction, but also accepting that the IRP must be a bit more agile. So you can see we're living in an era where the geopolitics is such that it's unpredictable, and energy is at the center of that. I mean, if we're dependent on oil, over-dependent on oil and gas, will be in a major difficulty. And that's why you are seeing some of the European countries have restarted some of their coal-fired power stations to mitigate against the geopolitical induced by the war in the Israeli-American war exchanges, and that's why we talk about the risk-adjusted IRP.
Deputy Minister, there are a lot of plans that are mentioned in this speech, but also in the other bits of work that I've noticed that the department has been engaged with. So within the context of these 5 priorities for the year ahead, there's something called the South African Wholesale Electricity Market Implementation Roadmap. What is that? And what difference does it make within the energy supply?
For your viewers. So essentially, the Electricity Regulation Amendment Act went through Parliament a couple of years ago, and it was enacted last year. And what wholesale electricity market. So effectively what that does is...
Is that something we want?
Well, I don't think Eskom wants it particularly, but yes, it is something we want. We want to have a competitive electricity market. You know, one of the biggest concerns that face most consumers now is the cost of electricity, and we fully appreciate that. And when you have only one entity, electricity, it allows us to become more competitive, not only within the South African space, but across Africa. It allows us to engage in trading across you know, political lines and across borders. So the South African wholesale electricity market is going to be a game changer for this country, and obviously, you know, it will impact on Eskom, and Eskom's going to have to work around that. But it's going to be trading, which I think is going to be
so it's the introduction, it's the regulation making to enable more players within the system. But
because we're already doing that with our independent power producers, so we already have. Transmission obviously will remain within the sort of state complex, because it is a critical infrastructure, and we can't have, you know, just anybody you know, playing a part in that. But from a distribution perspective, this will allow then for other role players to take a role there.
Minister, you've got a lot of plans, but when I heard you talk money, you mentioned 6 billion rand only for this year. Yet at the same time, I heard you acknowledging that what you need is 2.2 trillion rand. Do the maths for us. How does the math add up?
Oh no, the math does add. So remember that the 6 billion is a budget allocation from the fiscal, allow us to put together the plan to execute our oversight role, and also to do transfers to some of the relatively required for you to add 100 of additional generation capacity. That money is sitting with the private sector, so there's a big pool of liquidity that's to provide privately generated electricity. NTCSA, so they put their own money, and of course their guarantees, backstop. Articulate what is the desired level of returns, if it's attractive and their shareholders accept that, they're able to sink their money, and then there's this new generation capacity. And then simultaneously we make the point that the transition can't happen without transmission, because we need to evacuate this electricity. So really you need to build the highways that is going to transport these electrons, if you like, the traffic to the load centers. And for that,
it's those big. Sorry, Minister, just for to take everyone along on the conversation. It's those big power lines, is it?
That's
those
right,
ones that are shaped like a human being with their
in the middle
arms
of nowhere.
stretched.
Generally, yes. But you must still bring the transforming infrastructure, because they come at high voltage. You must step them down until they get to the level of where it's being consumed.
That's why
we need about 14,000 kilometers of that, and that alone is about 440 billion rand. And that's why we have gone out and identified priority corridors. Priority is defined as those corridors that in the shortest possible space of time we are able to onboard the renewable energy assets. Already there are stranded electrons. By that I mean there are projects that have developed or they are ready to be developed. So what is undermining the ability to be connected is because of absence of grid. So that's a 440 billion rand ticket. That money is not sitting with the department nor the fiscus. They were designing bespoke financing instruments to support that. But on the back of that, we need to industrialize. So it's a build program sustained over a period of 15 years. So there's industries that can be built on the back of that, get people into jobs. You just had the quarterly labor force survey, and you have seen that the 1.3 percentage point increase in the unemployment rate. So you can use energy as a lever to address the issue of unemployment.
So, Minister, we are live on SABC News, but also carried live on our YouTube channel. But I'd like to take as much advantage while I have the both of you for that window that we have on SABC News to cover some of the bigger themes that I'm sure many people at home will be wondering about. So if I may ask you, of that 14,500 kilometers of transmission lines, how many kilometers are we going to travel in 2026?
No, we'll do, about 1,600. Remember that we are going to do this over a period of 10 years. So it's in the nature of this, follows what we call a hockey stick. So when you start very small. You are going to peak at some point because you need to ready the industry, the supply side must be ready. So as you start, you are preparing them. But they also need to have see-through, that it's a credible plan, that the state will not deviate from this plan, and then they'll increase their capacity. And as they increase that capacity, we should be peaking at building about 2,300 kilometers per annum. And then you stretch that over a period of 10 it's going to be
straight out the gates is 1,600.
It's in the nature of this engineering
within this year.
effort.
And Deputy Minister, there's something that the Minister touched on, embedding this within industrial policy. What does that talk to? What is it born out of? What are the lessons we are learning as we are engaging in this transformation of the energy sector that we are seeking to now address with this approach?
So we've had this huge sort of surge of renewable energy infrastructure built in this country since 2015, since they started with the bid windows with the REAP program. And what we've done as a country is we have failed to capitalize on what that could have done in terms of jobs and industrialization. So the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan has been crafted with the idea to create an industrialization on the back of the renewable energy market that's happening. We needed, of course, the project pipeline certainty that came with RRP, that's come with the ITP. So we know then we've got 15 years of development in terms of transmission. We now know that we've got 17 gigawatts of renewable energy that's got to come online. What that then creates is market certainty, and that will then allow people to believe that there's an investment case for this country. In addition to that, Africa is also undergoing an energy revolution, and we definitely foresee the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan becoming a part of what is going to happen in the rest of Africa. So it changes the investment case from a South African market to the broader African market, and suddenly it's a really, really interesting investment case to bring in industrialization. We can't grow jobs if we can't improve the unemployment rate if we're not creating jobs, and we can't create jobs if we're not industrializing on the back of what we're trying to build here. 2.2 trillion rand is a lot of money to invest, and then to develop an industrialization around that makes the right sort of sense for us.
All right, Minister, so let me then get a cut to the chase. A couple of weeks ago, you were talking at Eskom's winter outlook briefing, and you were talking about something along the lines of electricity supply is now guaranteed. We have electricity. Mteto Nyati a couple of weeks ago also telling me that actually we have an excess of electricity. But there are pockets of this country that don't feel that. Load reduction. The mandate from President Ramaphosa in his State of the Nation address on the 12th of February was eliminated by next year. Are you on track for that?
No, more than confident that we're going to eliminate it. The Western Cape, Northern Cape, we have eliminated load reduction. If there's a consumer in those provinces that has got challenges with regards to electricity, it has nothing to do with load reduction. It could be something to do with localized failure in their area.
So which provinces are those?
No, Northern Cape and the Western Cape. That's done. So I'm confident that the Free State, the Northwest, and the Eastern Cape, yes, we should be done by load reduction, say end of September, we'll be out of those areas. And then comes Mpumalanga, we're confident by October we should be out, and Limpopo, by the way. The two provinces that are giving us challenges is KZN and Gauteng, because of the concentrated nature of load reduction, and the fact that the issues of illegal connections are more rampant and more pronounced in those areas. And when we go into localities, general rejection of ESCOM coming there to come and resolve the challenge. And part of the problem is that there are rent seekers, rackets that benefit from illegal connections because they play a role of a mini ESCOM in those spaces. And we do accept that a significant part of those who are delinquent belongs to us as an ESCOM and some of the municipal contractors. So it's something that we need to address internally. Of course, we'll work with ward councillors in the current administration and the next one that's coming in local government to accelerate that. So if our plans are going to go according to plan conservatively by March of 2027, we should have eliminated load reduction across the length and breadth of the country. But yes, you're absolutely correct. I think it undermines the lived experiences.
That they can start to eliminate those electricity losses, which will then obviously also make sure that municipalities start to become more sustainable in their electricity business. Yeah. So it really is a sort of a hugely beneficial strategy that we've got in place. Microgrids are being used in informal settlements to address the lack of power there. So there are a number of interventions that are being done throughout the country, but they are very much bespoke as well, because you obviously need to address each area individually. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
So this is the load reduction elimination program.
Correct.
Minister, let me the program and policy. It's called the electricity pricing policy. It addresses a specific issue that is in the budget vote speech. Tell me about what it entails, because many South Africans will have the bitter memory of the recent past and that blunder that occurred between ESCOM and NERSA that had the effect that, you know, what we thought was the tariff, as much as we were adjusting to it, only to find out actually you need to adjust far much more. What does this policy entail?
So what NERSA does is a regulator that translates the policy into a tariff, that which you and I have to pay at the end of each month. So the problem is not an we are resolving the policy question. So essentially available, but it must be accessible. Because like I said, what I mean by that. So we do appreciate the fact that between 2007 and 20%. Yeah. So that delta, it means that we have significantly eroded the disposal. So we're stunting growth in the country. But also we're undermining the ability to compete. Some of them, they're exporting, so their goods are lending very are being produced through energy intensive, if you like. So we need to resolve that question. Yeah. So how do you suggest to resolve that question? We have finished the pricing policy, just going through the approval processes in government, public. Is that there's a special category of consumers that you give them on the one side age pension grants, SASA and the like. Yeah. So yeah, the net really is that they remain very is being eroded by the cost of these administered prices. So we're creating electricity from 50 kilowatt hour to a number that is anything between 100 kilowatt hour. But we are not going to burden the state. So you and I reallocate it for this purpose. The second one is on African economy. Must get people into jobs. So for because some of them they're exporting. So you need to create a dispense that they get people into jobs and we are able to address poverty. And so this has to do with how you account for your in your asset base, how you account for the tariff, because what that does is going
that cost reflective
yes, but also how over time, I mean, how do you account for on your asset? And we think doing all of the above, including new technologies, the structural reconfiguration of your, then you will be able to significantly address the cost of electricity.
Let me ask you to pause there, Minister. Thank you for that. We'll take a quick break. You're watching The Full View, coming to you live from Cape Town. This is a special in which we engage in conversation with the Minister and Deputy Minister of Energy, of Electricity and Energy. We're told our biggest problem and critique in terms of how that was handled.
Problem. And there's a existing technology contribute towards the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and we know that they are responsible for climate change. And we have to suggest to anyone that we can industrialize, and that's the point, that we're talking the principle of additionality. So it's not a binary conversation. It's not renewables versus coal. It's going to happen at an accelerated pace. If you come to think of it now, from a 62% of that will come from renewables. So that's a given. But there are these other power stations that, of course, the older you get, the less the performance. Just to give you a sense, if you look at the, doesn't follow that the older you are, I'm here, I'm on this question.
We will have to do this at a pace and scale that works for South Africa.
You about the age of the coal fleet, because when you said it's performing and it's about engineering, I equipped and I said, that's the opposite of what we were being told just 3-4 years ago.
With the war, the Americans and the you have seen what some of the European countries have done. They just went back and we have seen some of the countries extending the life of the coal-fired power. Principal overriding consideration, national interest. Does the national interest mean that the nation to protect those communities? But we know technology exists to protect those communities. We also have technical limitations. Yeah. They are non-dispatchable. Take the Cape. How are you going to get that electricity? Now, as I speak to you, the people of the Cape, and wherever they have inclement weather. Part of the 5 outcomes is to ensure that we accelerate investment. So it means the plan works. But assume for a moment that the whole country is under inclement, remains the backbone of South Africa's economy. Does that suggest that Eskom must remain a monopoly?
The department will advance the nuclear program with prudence and characterize the particular one that we are having now. That has to do with the new build program of some
in the world. The first one we've accepted in the taxonomy. One is that the major countries have agreed that they are going to triple financiers, including the World Bank, have accepted that we are going to fund. We have abandoned our strategic advantage by discontinuing the pebble bed modular reactor. Milk, we are not crying over that, but we are going to build that program. And we are talking about and we are going to do it. We will announce and then separate the procure. We will build nuclear as a backbone for electricity.
Company of South Africa, and that work that is being work. How far will you advance it in the next 12 months?
That we established in our term, and that's obviously the start of everybody else to run. What we have developed that we need, but that will be on a build operate.
I think that's worth saying a bit slower. Mission itself.
In the generation side of things, as our transmission is really limited in the areas where we have those pathways to evacuate those electrons, but we don't have 450 billion. As a department, we have demonstrated through both REAP and now through the ITP, the only way this country is ever going to rebuild itself, because the government itself doesn't have the funding to do what we. We've seen as well how the economy has grown since the end of load shedding. Energy has on this economy. Yeah. And so we have to, as the minister has also said, not take our foot off the gas and not take our eye off the ball. or I don't think maybe you said that. I apologize for stealing your comment. But essentially, at the end of the day, we have to be absolutely intentional about how we do this. And the NTCSA is in that process. Right. They're functional, they're operational, and they're proceeding. So bearing in mind as well, we have the ITP, but we also have Eskom building their own transmission at the same time. So there are two build programs that will be happening.
Minister, at the risk of my team sending me to the sin bin, I don't know for how long, let me ask you to then conclude. Everyone watching at home, families watching us because they have electricity, those who are struggling with electricity at the moment and will hear about these conversations, captains of industry deciding what do we do over the next 12 months. In summary, in about a minute, what would you say is the outlook going forward? You framed this as the year of delivery. This year ahead must be a year of execution discipline. What do you mean by that in a minute?
So we'll keep the lights on. We'll come out in the public on how we are dealing with the cost of electricity. We're going to ensure that we'll industrialize on the back of our build program to breathe life into the South African economy. I'm more than confident that realization. There's no economy that grows, there's no investment. The lights are off. We'll keep them off. There'll be a irrespective of the economic standing.
And we'll hold you to that.
Absolutely.
Minister, plans are in terms of expenditure and various programs and policies as far as the energy space is concerned. That will do it for The Full View, coming to you live from Cape Town. From us, cheers, take care.
Our target is 200 billion.
Other provinces must also succeed, because if they don't succeed, you will then have a problem of in-migration.
That we do have in our continent between Africans, and I think that AfCFTA will be a great opportunity for all of us.
And our approach as Gauteng is that, and ensure that the cost of living is not high. Government must do what governments must do. Ensure that you offer quality public goods.
In Guinea, currently we have one of the biggest mining projects going on called the Simandou project, whereby I feel as if no other African countries is aware of. So events as such is quite what is happening within that country, and also hearing what is happening in other countries and finding ways to collaborate and partners.